Hello boys and girls, welcome to Mrs. Vandu's Math Movies. This movie is for my Algebra 1 class, Lesson 2-5, Properties of Numbers. Our objectives in this lesson are to identify properties and use deductive reasoning. Okay, so here again we have quite a few notes. Some of it's just reviewing the properties, but let's go ahead and do this. Hopefully I won't get anything turned around. Certainly if you ever find that I've written or said something wrong, which I am prone to do at times, please let me know in class so that we can correct it. Okay, for properties of real numbers. For every real number a, b, and c, the commutative property of addition tells us that a plus b equals b plus a, or 3 plus 7 equals 7 plus 3. Okay. A close cousin is the commutative property of multiplication, which tells us a times b is equal to b times a, or 3 times 7 is equal to 7 times 3 if I look at it with a numerical example. The associative property basically tells us that I can change the groupings without changing the value. So the quantity a plus b plus c is equal to a plus the quantity b plus c, just by changing the groupings, not the order. So the quantity 6 plus 4 plus 5 is equal to 6 plus the quantity 4 plus 5. For multiplication, the quantity a times b times c is equal to a times the quantity b times c. All right. The quantity 6 times 4 times 5 is equal to 6 times the quantity 4 times 5. The identity property of addition tells us that a plus 0 equals a. So 9 plus 0 would equal 9. Okay. Identity property of multiplication. A times 1 is equal to a. 6 times 1 equals 6. Okay. The inverse property of addition tells us that for every a there is an additive inverse, the opposite of a, such that a plus the opposite of a is equal to 0. So 5 plus the opposite of 5, which is negative 5, gives us the sum of 0. Inverse property of multiplication. For every a, when a is not equal to 0, there is a multiplicative inverse 1 over a, such that a times 1 over a is equal to 1. So, for example, 5 times 1/5 is 1. I'll get 5 over 5, which simplifies to 1. All right. The distributive property, a times the quantity b plus c, gives us ab plus ac. So 5 times the quantity 4 plus 2 gives us 5 times 4 plus 5 times 2. Of course, we could simplify further when we have numbers as well. With variables, we have to stop here. A times the quantity b minus c gives us ab minus ac. So 5 times the quantity 4 minus 2 would be 5 times 4 minus 5 times 2. And again, could simplify further here, just we haven't been asked to. And multiplication of property 0 tells us for every real number n times 0 is equal to 0. So negative 35 times 0 is 0. Here, multiplication property of negative 1. For every real number n times negative 1 is equal to negative n, or the opposite of n. So negative 1 times negative 5 gives me positive 5, if I want a numerical example. Again, many of these properties you do know, because you use them daily, you may not always know how to express them. So we do want to pay attention and know what we're using. We are going to be asked to identify that in this chapter. So we are going to have to pay close attention to what's what. Deductive reasoning, which is what we're going to be using in this chapter, in this section, is the process of reasoning logically from given facts to a conclusion. Okay, so we reason through something, can relate those back to facts, and from those facts and how they relate to our problem that we're dealing with to a conclusion is called deductive reasoning. Okay. All right. Our examples. Okay. First of all, we want to name the property each equation illustrates and explain. Okay, so here we have 3 times a, whoops, I apologize. 3 times a equals a times 3. This is the commutative property, and I'm going to abbreviate because it is notes, of multiplication. Now, if you were actually writing this out on a test, I would prefer that you not abbreviate, but it is notes and I allow for that, okay? Because order does not matter. In multiplication. Okay, so that's my own interpretation of what the commutative property tells me. Order does not matter in multiplication. You might word it slightly different and still, again, if you're going to tell me something that is rational and true, I'm going to be okay with that. Okay, here we have p times 0 equals 0, and this is the 0 property of multiplication. Okay, and that's because 0 times any number is 0. Okay, 6 plus negative 6 equals 0. This is the inverse property of addition. Because the sum of 2 additive inverses or opposites, which is another name for additive inverses, is 0. Okay. Excuse me. Then I have z times 1 over z is equal to 1 for z not equal to 0. We state that simply because, remember, we cannot have 0 as the denominator in a fraction because division by 0 is undefined. And this is my inverse property for multiplication. And basically that tells us that the product of 2 multiplicative inverses or reciprocals is 1. Okay, so reciprocals is the shorter name for multiplicative inverses. So if you thought you should say multiplicative inverses, that's correct as well. All right, let's go on. And this is kind of what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be justifying why one property applies to a given step or something in here, and as we go through these. So these are just kind of a warm-up for what we're going to be doing in the others here. Suppose you buy a shirt for $14.85, a pair of pants for $21.95, and a pair of shoes for $25.15. Find the total amount you've spent. Okay, so basically what we want to do here is, if I bring the, I'm going to commute here. So this is going to use the commutative property of addition. And I'm going to commute the $25.15 and the $21.95, because 15 and 85 make up a round dollar amount. So now my next step is to associate them, and a lot of times most of us do this automatically and really kind of in one step, but when we are breaking it down like this, we are analyzing it step by step by step. And this is the associative property of addition. Please abbreviate associative ASSOC, please, so there are no miscommunications with other words. Okay, so if I add these two together, 1485 plus 25, the 15 and 85 make a whole dollar, so that's like 15 plus 25, which is 40, and then 21.95. 61.95 is the sum. So the amount that I spent was $61.95. Okay, so I've applied two properties here, and then this just addition within the parentheses or order of operations, something similar to that. As long as it's not far-fetched, I am somewhat flexible on some of these when it's something like this. Again, we'll talk about this more in class, so you'll have a clearer idea of what I'm going to expect. Okay, here we have simplify 3x minus 4 times the quantity x minus 8, justifying each step. So the first thing we're going to do is let's distribute here. So we're going to use the distributive property. So this is going to be minus 4x and then minus 4x minus 8, or is going to end up with a positive 32. Remember, if you sort of treat this as negative 4 and negative 8, that tells you that that's going to be a plus 32 in there. Okay? And then, again, this is the distributive property here as well, but kind of in reverse. My other students would ask us, well, that's in reverse. Okay, it is, because I see that I have a common factor of x, so I'm going to factor out their coefficients of 3 minus 4. So 3 minus 4 gives me negative 1x, which is just subtracting. And then I have negative 1 times x, which gives me negative x. Okay. And I think this is the multiplication property of negative 1. Your book, I'm not sure exactly what they wanted there, and we might want to debate this a bit in class. Let me see if I can take a quick peek here of multiplication. Yeah, I think this is the multiplication property of negative 1. So I'm going to line this out. If you think it's something else, bring it to me in class and we'll see. Okay, I just didn't agree with what the authors have here. Okay, that's it for the notes. I know this is a bit long. There are on page 32 in your notes, there are the quick checks. So have those done by the next time we meet, and I look forward to seeing you then.